Thank you for following us at DRB Media Communications Digital News. I'm Viridiana Marquez, and here's the story.
Due to Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, Midland Memorial Hospital, ODESSA Regional Medical Center, and Medical Center Hospital are experiencing a shortage of IV fluids.
Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico several weeks ago, and there are a large number of manufacturing plants on that island. Not only did the hurricane cause damage to the plants, but it also impacted the living conditions of the workers, and many of them are not able to work at this point. They've fled the island or are having to try to restore their own residences. So the supply of what is being produced from those plants is not happening. A lot of what was produced there are small volume IV products. So we get IVs of varying kinds, normal saline, dextrose, lactated ringers, in bags everywhere from a 50 ml size up to a liter size. So the 50 ml, the 100 ml, and the 150 ml are bags that we use to dilute other drugs into to be able to administer them to the patients. It's a very convenient method. You put the drug in the bag, you hang the bag on an IV pole, you attach tubing to it. It goes through a pump which controls the rate that the drug is administered to the patient, and then the patient gets the drug over a defined period of time. This became very popular with smart pumps that came about in the 1990s and became the standard of care. And now that we're not able to get a continuous supply or a consistent supply of those bags, we've had to look for other ways to administer those medications to patients. So several strategies have been developed. I'm confident in saying at this point that all patients are able to receive the medications that they need in a safe and effective manner. It's just had us to look at the process. So one of them is that we are doing things IV push. So instead of putting the medication in a small volume bag, we put the medication, we dilute the medication, and then we put it into an appropriate size syringe. And then the nurse is able to access the IV line for the patient, push that syringe at a rate that's been deemed safe, somewhere between 1 minute and 5 minutes, depending on the medication itself, and administer it directly to the patient that way. In some ways, it means they go in fewer times. If they have several things scheduled back to back, previously they would hang them on the pump, they would run over 30 minutes, then they have to go back and change it to a different drug and then let that run over 30 minutes or an hour and let that run. Now they can go in and administer all of the IV medications in fairly close sequence to one another, and then anything that is required to be hung in a bag, and there's some antibiotics that must be diluted and given over a prolonged period of time, then they would hang those at the end of that time. So in some ways it saves them time, but in other ways it's more work because they have to flush the line with saline prior to giving the drug, and then give it, and then flush the line again to make sure there's no residual drug in the line, and then they start with the next product. The hospital has had to adopt these strategies for conservation, even though the primary problem at this point is the small volumes. We had a fairly large stockpile of large volume or 1 liter fluids stored to be prepared for any disaster that could occur. So we are not at this time impacted by that, but we've had to not use those as frequently as we would otherwise. Sometimes whenever you come into the hospital, they just automatically start an IV just in case they might need one. Now we're putting in access to a vein or to a site, and not hanging that IV bag that is not hydration you really need just to keep that vein open. We just go in and flush it to make sure that it stays available should it need to be needed. The other thing is that we're aggressively looking for patients that are already eating well and don't actually need IV hydration, and so we're stopping those fluids maybe sooner than would have happened otherwise. Yes, absolutely. Because that's the goal, is to make sure that those critically ill patients, those patients that truly need hydration because of sepsis or some other disease state that's dependent on that fluid bolus for resuscitation, that it's always available for them. We don't want to just use the supply we have and then say, oh, it's gone. We want to make sure that we're proactive and have conserved in all those areas which will not impact the quality of patient care, so that we have fluids available for those critical patients that will need it later. We have a wholesaler that we purchase medications through, and then we buy direct from the companies themselves. All of the IV manufacturers are experiencing the same scenarios, because even the ones who didn't have plants in Puerto Rico, they're trying to sell to those places that don't have any, that have been impacted. So right now the existing manufacturers cannot meet the demand of the market. Yes, we absolutely would purchase from another company if we were able to do that. It's not close enough that the manufacturers are telling us that we'll be able to resume normal production or normal purchasing anytime soon. What happens when they don't have enough product to meet supply, then they determine an allocation amount. So based on your previous purchases, they'll say, okay, we don't have enough to supply everyone everything that they want, so you can have 30% of what you bought last year. And that's usually what happens first. Once the supply chain starts to produce product again, then they'll tell us that we can buy at some reduced amount. And then it takes several months to ramp back up to where, okay, now we're making enough. If you want to buy it, we can buy it. There are gray market distributors that always seem to have product that will charge you a large amount of money to purchase them. What we tend to find historically when we've had drug shortages in the past is that when the product comes back on the market, it costs more than it did before. Right now, we have contracts with these companies, and so they've decided or determined that they will sell to us at a specific price over a specific period of time that's covered by the contract. When the contract expires, then they always renegotiate for a higher rate.
While hospitals nationwide are experiencing a shortage of IV fluids, all 3 local hospitals have fluids available. Inventory is available for trauma and emergency cases. This is DRB Media Communications Digital News.
Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. You can also follow us at DannyVisionEntertainment.com. For DRB Media Communications Digital News, Viridiana Marquez.